Hello, hello, and welcome to 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲 Champions League semi-final second leg. Season's coming to an end. Champions League is round the corner, although we still don't know which teams are going to have to book their tickets to Istanbul. We know at least one team who could start making plans so far. That is Inter after the 2-0 in the first leg with Milan. But when it comes to Manchester City or Real Madrid, I really have no idea who is more likely to be in the final. Thankfully, we have Daniele, Fisichella, and Alvaro Romeo, who know better than me. How are you doing, guys? How are you this morning?
All very well, thank you.
Good to have you guys in this show, which is gonna preview the second leg semifinals of the Champions League. But before we get started, please, as always, do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. Now, let's go. All right, guys. Tuesday night we have Inter Milan. I can't think of such a poor defending as Milan has shown in the first half when Inter in the first leg. They could have been. We could have been talking here of a 4-0, 5-0 thrashing in those 35 minutes. A Milan side without 𝐬𝐭𝐽 struggles a lot to create opportunities at front. I guess features are working all day long to make sure 𝐬𝐭𝐽 can be fit for the return leg. The weekend wasn't particularly good too for Milan after losing again 2-0, in this case against 𝐻𝐿. For Inter, of course, the situation is completely the opposite. They have a comfortable advantage, but maybe they shouldn't feel over comfortable because football has many lessons in that regard. Of course, bookies place Inter as favorites here for this second leg. 2.16 for an Inter win, which are not bad at all. When we look at odds on who is going to qualify for the final, Milan shows a staggering 14. Dani, I will start with you. Do you think anyone could make a killing here with those odds? Would you give any thought in Milan making a comeback here?
Strangely, in Italy, there is a situation where both camps are confident. Look, Inter obviously are very confident because of the way they started the game, the way they controlled the game. They could have scored 4 or 5, as you rightly said. But on the other hand, because Milan only lost 2-0, and obviously now they're going to play away, but it doesn't really count. There is a strange feeling of confidence at Milan despite their appalling defeat against La Spezia. Maybe it's because the tifo, the ultras, the support, they are trying to instill into the team the last drop of energy, but there is a feeling Milan could turn it around because they only were defeated 2-0. So at the end of the first leg, they were almost both happy. Milan, they were happy that they were not out of the tie, and Inter, they were happy because they won it. But I think Milan are going to kick themselves because of the way they started the game. And the rhythm the Inter imposed from the start really surprised Milan. We do know that Milan are more happy when the ball is with the opposition. We do know that Milan are happy when the opposition attacks you and they can, of course, hit you on the counter. Inter did it really well and surprised Milan that perhaps were expecting Inter to start a little bit slowly. But then again, when you get Calabria to mark 𝐿𝐵 on a corner, it's not a question of rhythm or how you start. I think it's just poor marking and poor pairing, really. But anyway, now Milan got 𝐬𝐭𝐽 back. I'm sure he's going to be playing. He's renewed his contract. He's going to play on the left. Without 𝐬𝐭𝐽, Milan hasn't won any of the last 10 games. It's going to be Saelemaekers on the right. And very importantly, Diaz behind the strikers because Bennacer is injured, so he's a more attacking Milan side, which they need to do it, but there is a lot of work to do for Diaz in midfield to protect Tonali and 𝐾𝐿. Milan midfield in the first leg, they couldn't follow the runners of Inter. They were overrun. Of course, Milan in the last 10 games, they've all been under. They haven't scored more than 2 goals only once in the last 26 games. That was the 4-0 win at Napoli. But then again, it goes to show that they can turn things around. Inter cannot be too confident, although 24 goals scored in the last 8, won the last 7 in a row, kept 7 clean sheets in the Champions League. Onana didn't have to make many saves in the first leg. Now, the question is, this is a game, really, where there are not going to be many surprises. They know each other really well. They played each other 10 times in the last 3 years. And unless Pioli has a stroke of genius, like playing with Origi and Giroud up front, or maybe Rebic up front, it's going to be pretty much the same pattern. So it's going to be a lot about intensity. It's going to be a lot about capitalizing for the other team's mistake and keeping your concentration high. Who's going to be able to do it better? Inter, of course, they are very, very confident. They made a lot of rotation at the weekend. 𝐬𝐭𝐽 is fully rested. The rotations are working. Inzaghi has got everyone fit in the key moment of the season. And of course, domestically, Champions League spot is almost secured, +5 on Milan. So a little bit of weight of the mind. But let's praise a little bit this Inter side. The Inter of the experience, the Inter of the free agents, Acerbi, Mkhitaryan, Darmian, Onana, 𝐬𝐭𝐽, both basically for peanuts. Lukaku is a loan. Lautaro both ages ago, so they definitely amorted the cost of that. The Inter of the low cost with Inzaghi at the helm, a stubborn manager, 3-5-2. He knows his way, but the players, of course, trust him. Are there going to be a lot of shots? In the first leg, there were 29 shots, not all of them on target. So we could see a lot of shots, a lot of attempts there. 3 yellow cards. Of course, there could be more this time because the double yellow card doesn't count for a potential suspension to the final. So again, you could see more yellow cards. I think I'm going to see goals here. Really, I can't see this one being a tight one, as we could have been the first leg. By the way, we got it right after all. In Oddspedia, I said under 2.25 goals. We actually got it right. But I'm going to go over 2.25 goals, 190. So only 2 goals scored, you lose half your stake. And I'm also going to go both teams to score, 199, for what I think is going to be a game that look, the first goal in this game is massive. Okay, who scores the first goal? Everything can change, but even if Inter scored the first goal, I think it could be about to score, 199 for me.
Yeah, I was looking at that both teams to score. I also believe here, plus with 𝐬𝐿 playing, the chances of Milan scoring are really high. You mentioned how many shots there were in the first leg as well. I believe that could be a case of desperation and something that could happen again in the second leg. On the comments, guys, again, we always value your feedback, your tips, your comments, so you can place your comments here to share with us. 𝐿𝐭𝐴𝐽 saying Inter winning easy. Alvaro, do you think that will be the case?
Not necessarily, but I think that I'm going to back Inter overall, because I don't think that it's in Milan to trigger a remontada, a comeback. It's not in them. It hasn't been. And if you look at their numbers last season, for example, they won the Serie A thanks to keeping very solid defensively. Last season, they conceded 31 goals in the Serie A. This season, they have conceded already 41. And it wasn't such a surprise that Inter managed to capitalize Milan's structure the other day, because they were terrible. They were terrible. And I think that it was ridiculous the way they defended. I think that Milan midfield was completely dismantled very easily as well. And, if Inter plays with the same script they did play against Milan, I think that they are going to qualify for sure. But I go back to my main point, or my first point. Milan doesn't have a remontada in them. I don't see that happening. Of course, we have seen many things happening in football. But for example, in 2023, Milan has only scored 2 or more goals in one game. Against Napoli. It happened against Napoli in one of the biggest days. But basically, they need to do that, and it's not in them. That's the thing, that they qualified to the semifinals of the Champions League thanks to keeping many clean sheets. They didn't do it the other day, and this is going to cost them. Then they lost to Spezia in the weekend. I'm sure that this is not helping either. They rotated a little bit because they did 4 or 5 changes. But I would be, if I were Pioli, furious with the way that their defensive structure got dismantled the other day, because in that first half, in my opinion, they lost the tie and they lost the chance to qualify for the Champions League final. And again, last season, they were a very good defense, and this season they have been at times, but it's not enough. In a Champions League semi-final, you cannot basically let Çalhanoğlu and Mkhitaryan, 𝐬𝐭𝐽, to run into you like that. Even Edin 𝐬𝐭𝐽 did a nutmeg on Fikayo Tomori because he had so much space to do whatever, and Tomori was so exposed. And then another thing, Tomori and Kjaer, They are supposed to be, I wouldn't say that splendid defenders, but definitely defenders that know what to do when the ball goes at them and when the opponent sends through balls, either on the space, either between them. But the other day, they couldn't know how to cope without that. I was very surprised. And then I look at Inter, and I don't want to get too carried away because their result was very good, and therefore I'm making gigantic conclusions for something that shouldn't be that big. But Inter is in a good run, as Daniele said. I mean, they have been 7 games unbeaten. They beat Sassuolo 4-2 in the weekend. They have scored 21 in the last 7 games, which is a lot. And when I look at Inter Milan, I see 2 things. Number one, that they consolidated already their place in the Champions League spots in a very difficult season for many Serie A sides. So this is something that tells you that this club is right now running in the right direction. And number 2, they've got many goal scorers. And this is something that Milan cannot boast or cannot brag about. I mean, Milan's top scorer this season is 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲, and he scored 13 in all competitions. But Inter has 3 players who have already scored 10 or more goals. I'm talking about Lautaro, who has scored over 20, and that is incredible, really. It's an achievement. Edin Dzeko, 14. Romelu Lukaku, who started very slowly, 12. And Romelu Lukaku is becoming the danger he was. I don't know if he will ever get to the level he showed in the 2021 season, but he is definitely getting there little by little. And in the counter-attack, if Romelu Lukaku and Lautaro play together, if they happen to play together for 20 minutes or 50, they are going to be very dangerous as well. So for this game, no, I'm not backing Milan in any case. I know that the money is there, but I have to go for more marginal markets, really, or maybe more complicated markets, if you like. Like, for example, I found a combination that I really like, which is under 1.5 goals in the first half, followed by an Asian handicap plus 0.25 for Inter in the game. That pays 187, and I like it a lot because I think that Inter is going to make sure that the first half happens very quickly. Nothing happens in there. Stop Milan from storming onto the pitch, stop Milan from having a quick start. I'm pretty sure that they will try to do that, and I am expecting a very low scoring first half. So that's why I'm going for that combination. Under 1.5 goals in the first half in the game, and Asian handicap plus 0.25 for Inter.
So actually, first half draw on Oddspedia on average is on 2.20 as well, following what you're explaining, Alvaro. And you guys, because at the end of the day, when the big stakes are coming, like this one, second leg semi-final Champions League, to book a place in Istanbul, we start to think on individual players, because at the end of the day, those are the ones who decide games. You, Alvaro, mentioned few regarding Inter attacking powers. Do you both guys think on any individual market going into this second leg?
Yeah, I have a couple of them. One of them, because the money is brilliant, which is Olivier Giroud to score. That pays 3.8. And why I could potentially be back in this, even though I'm not too certain, because at some point Milan is going to start throwing crosses. And, the crosses are going to be basically targeting him, Olivier Giroud. So that's why 3.8 is good there, even though, I flag it, but I wouldn't put my money there. There is another one that I like more, which is Lautaro to score or assist. 2.0. Lautaro, look, the other day, Lautaro Martinez's mobility, in my opinion, was even more troublesome for Tomori and 𝐿 than Edin Dzeko. The way he was moving, and the penalty that got ruled out at the end, do you remember?
Yes.
It was thanks to Lautaro's way of moving. Lautaro is very clever. In between the lines, he does a fantastic job. By the way, the assist that he didn't give, but he gave to 𝐿 was beautiful as well.
Yes.
And I'm not backing Lautaro to score, because when he doesn't have his day, he doesn't have his day. But Lautaro to score or assist, given that he's going to be up there, given that he has scored 24 goals this season alone, for me is, I wouldn't say a no-brainer, but from all the individual markets, of course, is the best one. Lautaro to score or assist, 2.0.
He's a streaky striker. When he scores in a row, and he scored at the weekend against Sassuolo, although with a deflection.
Yeah.
And yes, I agree with you. 7 goals in 13 derbies for Lukaku. For Lautaro Martinez. If I need to highlight another one, maybe Tonali to score or assist. He gave a very good assist to Messias in the second half, which Messias squandered. And I think the chances for Milan to get into the game, they need to make sure Tonali is on the ball more than what he used to be in the first half. But otherwise, you can also look at Di Marco to score assist, 6 goals, 6 assists this season, and Inter had a lot of space in the left-hand side. Di Marco against Calabria, he was being, of course, the winner of the duel.
Yeah, actually, those two players, I liked it. Tonali, I believe, was the best for Milan on the first leg, and the Marco on that left-hand side. When we mentioned the runners, Mkhitaryan, 𝐜𝐭𝐿, and the movement of 𝐬𝐭𝐿 and Martinez, they need the backup of the Marco, and he's done it amazingly, at least on that first half. And of course, on the other side, then you got Dumfries. So that is Inter Milan for the second leg semi-final. Inter can't believe they have a feat at least on Istanbul for the final. They are coming with an advantage of 2-0. And from San Siro, guys, we're going to have to move on to the Etihad. We're going to have to move to Manchester. First leg, Real Madrid, Manchester City ended up with a 1-1 in a beautiful football encounter. Although I believe they both settled after De Bruyne scored the 1-1. I think the last 15-20 minutes they put the feet on the brake. To be honest, I said it on the beginning of the show, guys. I don't know what to make of this second leg. Anything could really happen here. Absolutely anything. We can see that on screen. Manchester City 1.66 for a win. Real Madrid 5.51. Alvaro, Dani, we have a colleague, Manuel Sanchez, who rightly pointed out last week that the odds on winning at the Etihad were lower for Arsenal than they are now for Real Madrid. And that doesn't make any sense. So, as I said, I don't know really what could happen here. I have many questions anyway coming into this second leg. Nevertheless, few of those questions are: do you believe City would be as cautious as they were in the first leg, at least judging by their own standards? Can you think of a second leg full of goals as we have in the first leg last year in the Etihad? Do you think anyone scoring first in this second leg could have anyone starting to celebrate quite early? Will Vinicius against Walker or Haaland against Militao, Rudiger, Alaba, the duels that will decide this tie? Or can we think of any unsung hero here? Alvaro, I start with you. I don't know if you have any other question or if you want to answer any of these, but again,
all of them.
Everything is open, I believe, here.
I want to answer all of them. I think that the scoring first will have a demoralizing effect on Manchester City if Real Madrid does it. I don't think that it will happen vice versa. I think that even if Real Madrid concedes a goal first, they're going to stay in the game and they're going to feel, I wouldn't say confident, but they will have the sense of duty. They will know what to do. Whereas if Manchester City receives a goal first, I can see them getting more nervous because they are playing at home and because they don't have Real Madrid's know-how. I think that this is something that could happen. Number two, the Vinicius Walker combat duel. I think that is not necessarily a Vinicius Walker duel because Vinicius avoids that because he's very clever. And the other day, for example, playing at the Santiago Bernabeu, he tested Walker a couple of times, not many, and he showed that it could be a 50-50 thing. And he started marauding a little bit more on the middle of the pitch. In fact, he scored a goal from the edge of the box and Kyle Walker wasn't marking him there. And when the vertical runs with Walkers towards the goal didn't work, he decided to start doing horizontal runs and open up new angles for himself just to start passing the ball. So I think Vinicius was very clever, but sometimes we tend to think, and this is a very big Twitter thing, that I get, it's contagious as well with me. And I end up thinking that games are battles, duels, but they are not necessarily like this. Normally we don't see that. And when a player sees that the danger or the opportunity is somewhere on the pitch, as long as he's got the permission from the manager, he goes there. So the Vinicius Walker thing, maybe we don't see it that much. Last season we saw a very big Vinicius versus Fernandinho thing because Vinicius wanted to stay on the left because he knew that Fernandinho was the weakest link of Manchester City. But, you know, talking about the odds and answering to another of your questions, I think that despite the odds are tremendously good for Real Madrid. I'm not ready to go for the full-time result because, as I said in the first leg, anything can happen in this game. And I've got a narrative written and a narrative in my mind for every possible scenario. But the odds are unfair and disproportionate because there is a wrong and misjudged perception, perhaps because the Premier League has the biggest exposure in comparison to other leagues. There is a wrong and misjudged perception about this game. Manchester City is not overwhelmingly favorite. It's not at all. And before the game, I could read the combined 11s. Some people put 7 players of Manchester City, 4 of Real Madrid, 8 players from Manchester City, 3 from Real Madrid. Not at all. I mean, De Bruyne, Bernardo, Diaz, Ederson, Walker will be glad to have the same place in posterity than Carvajal, Benzema, Kroos, Modric already have. That to start with. And not because they are all players, because they are legends, but they are living legends. And Modric and Kroos the other day, despite their age, especially Modric's, they were not faltering. They were totally up for it, and they were running the game as well. So these are not players who belong to the past. They belong to the present. Maybe not for every single game, and that's why Barcelona won La Liga yesterday, but for the big occasions. And when we talk about Manchester City as the kings of passing, well, the passing accuracy of Manchester City is the highest in the Champions League. Yes, 90.5. But the second best is Real Madrid, 90.2. There is almost no difference. In terms of technical levels, Real Madrid has the same amount of technique. And as I said, every scenario is possible. I think Real Madrid has more inspiration up front. Manchester City is more academical when it comes to attacking. And yes, Pep Guardiola the other day was very cautious at Santiago Bernabeu at some point. And I wonder if Manchester City at some point is going to get rid of the cautiousness and play this game with a little bit of more of an open heart. That's what I don't know. That's my biggest question of the game. Is Manchester City going to dare to do that? I'm not too sure about that because Pep Guardiola knows that in the Champions League, and he has said this many times in the past, if you give a chance to the opponent, if you lose the ball in a sensitive place of the pitch, they can hurt you. And he wants to avoid that at any cost. So that's why this game is pretty tricky. So, going for the full-time result is not good for me. I would like, for example, to go to some other markets, like both teams to score, for example, 167 is something that I can see happening again. And maybe Real Madrid to score over 0.5 goals is a good safe bet as well. That pays 142. We'll talk about the individual markets later.
Few comments on Sam is asking if we are live. Yes, of course. This show is live, guys. Fox saying Manchester City clean sheet. Well, that one will pay 270. A Manchester City clean sheet. If you don't want to go for the full-time market, the 2 qualify market has, for example, Real Madrid on 3.60. Again, very healthy odds there. 1.33 for Manchester City to qualify. Dani, would you like some drama here? Overtime, penalties here is something that can you see unfolding in the Etihad?
I could see it. Also, we forgot to ask one key question. You the right one. Is Pep Guardiola going to use his bench at all? He didn't do it in the first.
I think this time he will. He will have to.
I think he should. But maybe look, when it comes here, extra time penalties. But Real Madrid in the first leg have been really good at controlling games within the game. They were slowing down the rhythm. They were going to go up a gear, then was slowing down. The last 15 minutes, it was all Real Madrid, and it really gave you the sense they could score the second goal. It was interesting because both goals were scored against the run of play, so that tells you both teams have got a lot of resources to get themselves out of a perilous and dangerous position and to score goals. But I think the pressure here is all on Manchester City. Manchester City are going to be champions of England on Sunday when they beat Chelsea, as everyone expected. Everyone knew they were going to win the league, really, and it was not going to be Arsenal. I was certain. But they're going to be judged on this game and potentially on the final in Istanbul. They lose this game, they don't win the Champions League. Unfortunately, people will think that their season has been a failure. They win this game and they move on. Obviously, the history will going to be different. I think in the first leg, Manchester City, tried a lot in the first 15 minutes, didn't score, and got a little bit nervous because of that. And then, yes, it was a strange situation. No changes at all from Pep Guardiola, almost like he didn't want to upset too much the balance, but I think they might needed a few changes. However, they're very favorites here. I think they are two favorites. I think the odds are disproportionate, of course, but City at home this season have only dropped 5 points. They lost to Brentford, drew to Everton, and the last time they didn't score at the Etihad was the 9th of March 2022 against Sporting Lisbon. However, the first leg of that game finished 5-0, so it wasn't really a proper game. So you need to go back to the 30th of October 2021 to see Manchester City draw a blank when they lost 2-0 to Crystal Palace at home. You can expect them to score, although Real Madrid defense have been outstanding, especially to stop in the service to Haaland, but they do have other weapons. They do have the ways of hitting you. Kevin De Bruyne, I think, had 4 or 5 shots in that game only, in a game with relatively low shots, only 23 shots on target, but they're going to try that solution from distance more and more. And when it comes to Real Madrid, I totally agree with Alvaro. Carvajal, Kroos, Modric, they are stars of the present. But the question that is always hanging on is, when is a game too many for them? Because eventually time is going to catch up with them. So when is too much for them? When is going to be the game that is going to be, you say, okay, the time for them is done?
But
well,
let me tell you something, Daniele. I have seen glimpses of tiredness in Kevin De Bruyne and Bernardo this season. But I haven't seen any glimpse of tiredness in Toni Kroos or Luka Modric this season.
Maybe they've been rested. Maybe they've been rested a little bit more. They've been rested.
Yeah, maybe, and we're looking at their passports and their dates of birth, but the date of birth. But then when the game starts, I think it's been Pep Guardiola who has been talking about tiredness, not Carlo Ancelotti, because Real Madrid has rotated a lot this season.
They do, but perhaps the question that Real Madrid were out of the La Liga fight a bit earlier than Manchester City.
That's why.
That helps in the end. You know, it helps you. But we saw it last year. Real Madrid won La Liga and Champions League, so it's not a perfect equation. Look, if I have to go into the markets here, I think there are gonna be goals here because I think both teams are gonna go. I'm thinking the second half is gonna open up. Whatever happens is gonna open up, and I'm gonna go for over 1.5 goals in the second half, 185. But also because I do fancy Real Madrid chances here, not necessarily to qualify, but to get a result. I'm gonna go for a second half double chance, X2 for Real Madrid, 190. Doesn't mean Real Madrid are gonna win the game. Doesn't mean they're gonna qualify. But I think they're not going to be a walkover for Manchester City, as it is suggested. And that decent odds, really, for Real Madrid not to lose the second half, 190.
Alvaro, I will ask you for your individual markets on this tie. I believe there will be some Vinicius things to play there. But before that, because you mentioned before that for City especially, Real Madrid scoring first in the game could be detrimental for their hopes to make it into Istanbul. But the other way around, it doesn't sound the same because we know Real Madrid this season, Champions League, getting 2-0 behind in Anfield against Liverpool, 5-2, the game finished. And against City, in that first leg semi-final last year in the Etihad, Gabriel Jesus scored the second goal for Manchester City at the 11th minute of the game. The game was 2-0 for City, and then we know how that game finished with the 4-3. So again, Real Madrid knows how to survive within the games, even though they could fall behind badly in the opening quarter of an hour.
Yeah, just very quickly, I think that probably Manchester City will get rid of all that pressure of conceding and having to come back and all that as soon as they win a Champions League. The difference is that Real Madrid has won it last year. Therefore, I think that pressure is not in them because they are playing with the extra confidence of having won it. Number two, one of Guardiola sometimes can be a victim of his success because normally he tries to win every trophy, and sometimes in April he's got still 3 trophies hanging in there for him, or 4 or 5, and that's the thing. That's the thing that since the expectations created are so high, sometimes when he doesn't get all of that, the sense is a little bit of a disappointment, perhaps. So this is why mentally sometimes Manchester City looks like everything has to be in place for them to win. And as soon as something gets a little bit unshaken, as soon as something looks a little bit fragile, the whole thing demolishes and falls down. So this is what has happened to Guardiola sometimes, that for example in 2012 with Barcelona, it looked like they were ready to win everything again, and suddenly they ended up winning only the Spanish Cup, and that was a slight disappointment. But I think that for this game, Real Madrid will have probably all the mental tools, and they will be mentally strong, and Manchester City will need a favorable result to feel mentally strong. This is the difference between Manchester City and Real Madrid. Real Madrid doesn't need a favorable scoreline to feel mentally strong. And when it comes to the individual market, Leo, very quickly, I haven't committed to the full-time market. Daniele neither, I believe. I'm committing to the individual market of Vinicius. Vinicius to score or assist pays 2.0, and the truth is that he's been doing it a lot in the 2.4, sorry. He's been doing it a lot in the Champions League this season, and if there is any player to back for that value, it has to be Vinicius.
You, Dani, do you have any individual markets to look at?
I would look at the Kevin De Bruyne to have over 3 shots, because he had 4 in the first leg, 4 or more, and I think this is gonna be used more and more. But you haven't committed to that. But I think Kevin De Bruyne overall shots go over 24 shots, over 24.5. I think yes, that would be a good one.
In on the comment section, all in City, Fox 5, we could see it before there as well on the screen, saying he pointed out the clean sheet for Man City, and he's backing up that with data of City, this Champions League, expected goals against only 0.59 per 90 minutes. But of course, we are talking here of Real Madrid. Gundogan is on fire right now as well, it's true. And he's always scoring on very big moments for City as well. Gundogan, I remember last year, the last game of the Premier League at the Etihad, he scored 2 against Aston Villa to give then the City the title. Yesterday, scoring twice again in a very important game against Everton in Goodison Park. So why not to look at Gundogan? Guys, before we move on to ACCAs and safe bet, any other tip which is hanging on you, which you would like to share? Or shall we move on to ACCAs and safe
Let's
bet?
go on the best bet. I think
All right, so I start with you, Dani. Safe bet and your ACCA for this second leg semi-final Champions League.
Okay, let's start with the best bet, safe bet. Manchester City Real over 2.5 goals, which pays 163. And on to the ACCA, very simple. Inter Milan, il derby della Madonnina, derby di Milano, both to score, individually pays 199. Manchester City, Real Madrid, both to score, pays 171. Put it all together, it's 340.
What about you, Alvaro? Safe bet and ACCA.
Yeah, my safe bet is an Asian handicap of plus 0.25 for Inter in the first half. That pays 132. And my ACCA is Vinicius to take 1 or more shots on target. Real Madrid to score over 0.5 goals. And in the Inter Milan game, under 1.5 goals in the first half. Altogether, 322.
Amazing, guys. So that's safe bets and ACCA from Alvaro, Romeo, and Daniele Fisichella. I believe that's everything, guys, you need to know for the Champions League semi-final. Second leg starting tomorrow night with Milan and Inter, followed by Manchester City, Real Madrid on Wednesday night. Before we finish, I would like to thank you guys for watching, for sharing your tips, for leaving comments. We value your feedback and participation a lot. Before you all go to Oddspedia website to place your bets, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. Alvaro, Dani, see you next time, and thanks a lot.
Ciao, speak soon.
Bye-bye.